Howdy y'all, this is AR Cavally. Welcome back to my channel. We're going to do the second part, hopefully final part if I can squeeze it all in there, of the how-to for Across a Thousand Dead Worlds solo sci-fi horror role-playing game. So let's get back to the camera. Let's get back to the action. All right, so where we left off last time, we had just basically finished the site. Finished getting all the information for the site. And like I said, normally, I say normally, but I oftentimes will use one of a spare hex sheet. But I think this time I'm just going to use a point crawl system. All right, I'm going to double check just to make sure that what was going on here. So, because the hazards, sometimes they will limit, or the hazard and the story will sometimes guide or have specific directions as to what's going on. All right, so we rolled that it was a temple. And so that temple here, whether or not the Arsi were religious, some of their facilities offer no purpose other than a space for spiritual enlightenment and contemplation. I'm not sure how you would know that necessarily. Move that camera here. Get that back over. I'm not sure you would know that they were being all spiritual in that that room, since we know so little. But all right, so it's a temple with extreme. The story was extreme, or no, it was a source of corruption, and then it was extreme temperature. Temperature. All right, so you have to use a vac suit. Some of these, let's see. I would have swore that if there was one of these site stories that showed overrun, it meant that everything was an aberration. But I'm sure I saw that somewhere, but it might be. I don't remember exactly. If I'd rolled it, it would be in the details. So he has to keep his vac suit on. All right, so we're just going to keep Area 1 back here. All right, now there's no descriptor for the rooms themselves, which I kind of wish there were. But it's easy enough to flip back to this area in the back for the situations. Now these situations, they are things that come up that you can roll as part of the encounter. But we're just going to use these. Oops, not a D12, a D10, or a D20. All right, 53. Enlighten. It's a 13. So you look over here, see what kind of place you're in. And there's a temple. 13. Practice. So enlighten practice. So this is obviously, the entrance is some kind of, we'll say like a meditation chamber. Probably when they first came in, they stopped and meditated, or if they whatever their version of meditation. No telling, maybe their version of meditation was to eat their own thumbs. Who knows? All right. Now I'm also going to, while I'm here, I'm going to take these spare time ticks that I had from moving around the planet, and I'm going to carry those 4 over to here. Gonna carry that remainder. You carry the remainder? No, you don't carry a remainder, but you know what I mean. All right, so that means I'm going to, whenever you explore a site or enter a site, it's kind of assuming the same when you go in there the first time. So that's going to take 1 time tick. And I'm going to roll on our site exploration table. And this is basically, these pages are also, they're in the loop of the process. And they're in order. So there's encounters, resources, artifacts, okay? And then everything that comes across here is in order on the following pages. All right. Now, this is one of those places where it really would have been nice to have the page, you know, to know what page Dread Event is instead of me having to flip, you know, 12, 16 pages back and try to find it. But I digress. I already covered that in my review. So we're going to do our D10 and see what happens here. 1. All right. So we have an encounter. So right off the bat, there's some ancient, maybe some ancient monk or something who's doesn't want us poking around their thing. All right, so the first thing we do whenever we encounter a difficulty, encounter type is we determine the difficulty. So I'm going to roll a d20. 8. So that's a standard difficulty. Now it tells you what to do this, and then you go to the antagonist chapter. Again, been nice to have a page number, but I digress. Here we know we have the right here. All right. Antagonists, page 259. All right, now we've already used this chart back there. We found out that it was a standard battle. And when you make a single creature, or when you determine what is part of the encounter, you might find, like it says right here, well, we'll just look at the table. 1 member encounters. See here, you might have 1 standard and 2 easy, 1 elite, 3 easy. Whenever you are faced with multiples like this, in order to make sure that your character is not, you know, facing something like the like in some of the video games where the boars and the orcs and the guards are all only attacking you, it makes it so that what you're fighting are basically different versions of the same creatures. All right, so like when it says 1 standard and 2 easy creatures, you're really going to generate the easy and standard version of that creature. Now we see that the encounter danger, it doesn't scale by level or anything having to do with you. The only thing it scales by is the number of people in the crew. All right, the number of people there. And by the way, if you start with, say, a five member crew and then you lose 2 people, you're still rolling on the 5 member crew encounters. So you can find yourself in a lot of trouble that way. All right, so what we did, well, I don't really feel like going back, but I forgot what I rolled, if anything. Oh, okay, it was I don't know if I rolled that at all yet. All right, so it's a standard encounter, D20. All right, 18, so 2 easy creatures. So now what we're going to do, we are on planet. All right, now I think a case could be made that if you're in some kind of complex, you could use the off planet if it was something that local fauna wasn't going to get into. But I think in this case, you know, it's an ancient building and there's no telling who dug into what. So we're going to roll as planet surface. Guardian. All right. Now that makes it a little easier because once we get to the Guardian, okay, and they are immune to any morale or psychological effects. Okay, so these constructs found in essentially all RSI facilities, which, to be honest, I've never I've never run into one before in a facility yet. They're relentless and will only stop once they eliminated all intruders or have been destroyed. All right, so there's 2 easy guardians. Let's see, I'm wondering if I should just go through the creature creation. I think maybe I'll do that instead. But this is for making creature types. It'd be either aberration or local fauna. And I think we'll run through that just because. But what we were going to run into to start with is we have standard guardians. Or no, actually it was too easy. So they would be normal. So these are the 2 right here. Oh, well, I guess we'd have to determine what the role is. We could roll that randomly, or we could go back and use there's a chart when you're making your own to see what kind they are. Is there a psychic one? No. So we're just going to roll D4. All right, 4. So it's a Brahmari. That would be a swarm. It would be 2 easy swarms. All right, so here are stats for the swarms. They're easy, so they're pretty low. We're fighting 2 of them. Now they can initiate 2 attacks around, though, so that makes them a little bit more difficult. They have a kind of a low damage, D12. Like I said, they are easy, so... And we have an attack skill of +3. So... And no armor and no defense. But to be honest, I think it would be pretty hard for these guys to do much to me. Their constitution's only 4, so I'm pretty much going to knock them down and then follow up fairly easily. And they are easy. But just to get through this, just to work through the system, to show how to create the critters, I want to grab a creature sheet. Oh, oops, wrong stack. A lot of papers here. All right, well, I did find the sheet I was looking for, but also realized this is our site voyage log. This keeps track of all the places we've gone, how many artifacts we found on each, although it looks like I forgot to fill some of that out. And it tells you the name, because only one ship goes to each site, so you got to have the name. Although, apparently, very rarely, sometimes you might get a different ship that goes to the same site. When you generate your site, the landing spot, or the site itself, you put the information here, and basically you keep track of the resources and the voyages, the voyage time, that stuff. So this is one of those things where you could go back and revisit these, especially if you have a stack of sheets. You know, maybe you've already got all the areas marked out, what type of creatures are there. So, but we're going to go ahead and create some critters, or create a critter, an easy critter. And we're not going to, now it told us it was a guardian for a planet surface, but we're going to re-roll that and decide but either we get an aberration or a local fauna. All right, well, we'll call it an aberration. We're not doing a guardian. I don't care how many times you roll a 1. All right, so it is an aberration. This goes under type. And we're going to roll on the size chart, a d20 for the size. 5, large dog. Now, because of that size, it's going to be a -1 to its final damage attribute. All right, the rule of thumb, bipedal creatures move 1 hex per round. Quadrupedal and sexapedal move 2 hexes per round. And if the creature turns out to be a brute, they also end up getting 1 more move. So if you have a quadruped brute, then they could move 3 potentially. All right, so we're going to roll the creature drive. 1, territory control. That means that this creature dominates this territory, claiming it as its own. Any intruders are swiftly dealt with, or at least chased off. Territorial creatures don't pursue any characters that exit the area where they were first encountered. All right, so I'm just going to put that here, territory control. Now, the creature intellect is kind of optional, but we'll go ahead and we'll use it. You basically replace the intelligence with this number as opposed to what comes on the for the default for the creature type. All right, so animal-like. And so that's going to give it an intelligence. That generally intelligence doesn't really come into play. Okay, so it's going to be 6 minus 1d4, so intelligence of 5. Now you can have above human intelligence. That would be interesting. That would be interesting. All right. All right, so we have two easy creatures. So we start with our basic stats. It tells us our stats right here. Let's see. I wonder. You know, let's go ahead and we're going to make that standard. Let's bump that up so that we're making a standard. All right, 1 person. So 1 standard creature. I tell you what, yeah, we'll do 1 standard creature. It's a standard encounter. We'll do 1 standard creature. Just because it develops a little bit more and shows a little bit more. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the info from the book. And I'm going to copy it over. 12, 12, 10, 10. We determine its intelligence is 5. Charisma, 0. All right. So it tells us it's standard. It has 1 wound. So I'm going to mark that there. An awareness of 10. I don't think it has an awareness field, so I'm just going to put it there. And whenever you run into one of these things where it's an or, you can either pick it or roll it randomly. So right here, he has either an armor value of 2 or a defense value of 2. So I'm just gonna roll it. 1 through 3, it's armor of 2. All right, so it's armor of 2. So he has a 0 defense, and defense when it comes to the monsters, when it comes to the aliens, defense is their effectively it's their stamina. That's what they use to make it harder to hit them, and they only have so many points to use as well. So now we're going to roll for the damage type, and it's either a higher attack skill with lower damage, or it's a lower attack skill with higher damage. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so it's attack skill of +2 with a damage of 2d12. But we know that because it's a larger dog, it's -1 damage, so it's 2d12 -1. Okay, range if applicable, and we'll just note it and erase it if we don't need it. Oh, he's got a pretty good range. If he has some kind of ranged attack. All right, range is equal to 11. All right, now our recovery actions. When someone gets knocked down and they recover, or at least when the critters do, you determine whether they're bloodied, cornered, or overwhelmed, and then you apply one or the other of these. So I'm just going to come down here under the combat behavior. We'll put bloodied, and it's a straight 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 whenever they recover. So when they're bloodied, I'm going to 1, 2, 3 will be the first option. 4, 5, 6 will be the second. All right. So when he's bloodied, he flees. When he's cornered, he gets +2 attack. And then when he's overwhelmed, he gets -2 defense. Now, it's not really clear because a creature can get knocked down over and over and over again. It's not really clear if they roll each time they get knocked over. I think probably so. But I will generally, because if they get knocked down the second time, maybe they're overwhelmed instead of bloodied. It just depends on, one, if I remember to make that second roll, and then two, well, mostly if I remember to make that second roll. All right, so now here are our base stats. Now we're going to go over some other pages or some other parts of the process. All right, so a big part of the process is an enemy's roll. This is whether basically they're, melee, ranged, psychic, or something else. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that all easy one crew member opponents are brutes. So the first one that we would have created if I didn't decide to make it standard, and I'm going to mark that as standard up here on our creature index worksheet. And then you also mark the site down where you find them or where this creature was, so you can kind of stick them all together. But since it's a standard critter, we're going to roll. Well, we're going to roll on the roll. Roll for the roll. 9, it's a swarm. All right. So the roll is a swarm. And now you can see that each one of these modifies their stats and has different combat behavior. Combat behavior charts are pretty cool. All right, so this swarm is a group of dozens or even hundreds of smaller single individuals acting as a single opponent. So the size of the swarm is a large dog. It's not a swarm of large dogs. The first swarm I generated was a huge swarm of tiny, brightly colored fish creatures that could climb up the walls, and that was kind of interesting. All right, so swarms have no ranged attack, so no ranged attack for them. They can move twice per turn, so I'm going to put move equals 2, and they get a +5 to their attack skill, so that's 7. And this particular nomenclature, -1 in parentheses d10 damage, that means whenever you roll the damage, whatever that final number is, it's going to be minus d10. All right, so he's going to roll 2d10, 2d12, -1, and then minus another d10. So he may have a hard time damaging us with those dice, but 22 is the max he could get. That's still enough to, well, to knock me down. Okay, now swarms larger than a single human. So when we rolled the size, so 19 or 20, they can attack every single character at once. Now I'm assuming adjacent, since they're melee. Attacks against swarms do not roll on the hit location table. All damage is automatically modified by +1. So in those combat tables where you're supposed to roll the hit location, it modifies the damage. If you hit the head, it's +3, or torso +1, legs -1. But in this case, everything's just a +1. It's just a flat +1 against that guy. And I'm gonna note that somewhere, maybe right here. +1 for damage location. Or in essence, actually, they're going to be taking +1. All right, now we have our behavior. 1 to 7, they make an attack or they rush towards. 8 to 10, they use a special ability. Sorry, not showing my thing. 8 to 10, they make a special ability or a melee attack. All right, so basically, they're going to use, because each one has abilities. Each creatures have abilities. Some of those abilities are active, which means that they have to spend their turn using them, activating them. Essentially, he's either going to move and charge, or on an 8 through 10 on his turn, he's going to use his ability, if applicable. Otherwise, he's going to charge. And you can see some of these, like the Psychic here. He has a bunch of different options that he might do, but the Swarm is stupid, so they're not going to do anything except Swarm. All right, so this page here, this gives us creature unique traits, basically just a way to modify. And I'll be honest, I have generated creatures that could not hit me, but could not be damaged, and so it was a big long fight. So sometimes these things, they don't necessarily work out the best, and you just walk away, and they walk away, and pretend that there's not some strange human aliens invading their temple. All right, 6. +2 con, -2 will. All right, so that's going to bring their constitution up to 8. So it makes them tougher, but the -2 will, that's going to make it harder for them to recover. And then we're going to come up with an enemy ability. 7, Drain. Right now, Drain, basically, they suck wounds. And it's an active, so I always put that on there. So they have to choose to use their ability to use that ability. And what it does is they make an attack, and if successful, the target immediately receives 1 wound, and the creature heals 1 wound. So with this particular one, and some of the other ones, some of them don't have to hit rolls. You automatically take damage, or you automatically have to make some kind of save, but may not be saved by your armor. I had one Psychic critter who suffocated you, which was pretty cool. They like basically they just suffocated you from a distance. Unfortunately for that critter, he did not really have a lot of. I blasted him. Right, and some of a lot of these things are pretty cool, and in fact, their ability might be, a little more worrisome than their actual stats. Let's see. Oh, let me make sure I'm rolling the right number here. Yes, standard. Once you get elite, you can have multiples. A little note on making the same creature but in different versions. Now, again, it doesn't necessarily specify, but for everything that would be common between all of them, I keep that the same. So if we have an easy character, we roll up its ability, say it's Drain in this case. The standard, he's also going to have Drain. He may, if it's something different, like here, it doesn't have those same two, so we can choose those. We can choose one of those. This one has no defense either way, but this one, if he has, if you choose either armor or defense, the elite version is going to do the same, armor or defense, right? It's going to have the same because it's kind of an advanced and outgrowth of that. There's nothing that says that you could completely roll them up to be, absolutely different. But for me, it just makes it seem like, it makes more sense, like it's a natural evolution. Like if you roll the damage, the first option of damage, then for the elite, you do the same thing. All right. And for the same recovery actions, if they're if these are all completely different, or if it's completely different, then you can just pick a new one. But that's what I do anyway. All right. Just because it makes sense. Oh, what was I doing? I was actually looking up wounds. No, not wounds, abilities. Yeah, okay, so it is just one ability, one wound. Now they have an awareness stat, and this is what you use if you want to try to sneak. You want to try to sneaky through. All right. Now this is, most of these don't really have an effect except for maybe the number of limbs, because being a quadruped or sexipedal changes how much you move. But this is just rolling up a bunch of strange alien details about these guys. So overall appearance is Octopine. I must admit I had to look up a couple of these. Octopine. Oh, and then he's covered with, which is a D8 roll, feathers. And some of these, they look pretty, they sound pretty wacky until you imagine them being on some alien planet in a dark alien temple that's 150,000 years old, and then they're not quite so funny looking. All right, a 4. So he has several mouths. Some of these can be contradictory. You can have no mouth as a result down for this field. This one says several mouths, so just got to use some common sense on some of those things. All right, number of limbs. This one I'd have a hard time putting it at 0 since it's octopedal or an octopine. I guess it could just look like the body of an octopus, but let's see what we got here. All right, so none. All right, so no limbs, but it looks kind of like an octopus. So like an octopus that someone pulled all the limbs off of, maybe. Oh, maybe I should have rolled aquatic, but it still would have been none. So, all right, so for hind limbs and forelimbs, we don't have any limbs, but we do have a bunch of mouths. So we're going to roll D6. All right, 2. So a bunch of beaks. All right, so maybe this thing which is definitely Octopine. So maybe it walks around on all of its beaks. All right, eyes. We'll roll the type of eyes. Oops, 7. So it's on eye stalks. Oh, hey, maybe it's the eye stalks that make it look Octopine. And eyes number 8. It's got 6 eyes, so 6 eye stalks. Yeah. So that's why he looks Octopine. It probably does have like a bulbous octopus looking body, but it doesn't have any limbs, but it has these eye stalks, 6 of them. And I'll be honest, I think it crawls on them. That's how I'm picturing it. So that's why it looks so Octopine. It walks around on its eye stalks. And then now we're going to use this table to just come up with a name. First roll. All right, so just 1. Now the random creature names, they're supposed to be names that the crew gives them, but it's random, so it's not like the crew really gives it. You're kind of rolling to see what your crew person finally decides to name it, and sometimes it sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's like Brata Netu, whatever. All right, so 179. Gone. They've named him Gon. Gon. All right. So now we have created our local aberration. Now we're going to set up a map and do a little combat. All right. So I just randomly decided to choose this one. Since we're inside the site. Now there is a little combat sheet here for putting enemy stats, and then you can keep track of how many wounds they've taken, if they've been knocked down, stuff like that. And I'm going to give my reference manual a little run. I'm just going to use it to kind of, it tells me like stamina costs and gives me a detailed combat sequence and everything. All right. Now, whenever you meet a critter, you roll to see if they actually attack. 1 through 8, they attack. Okay, 9 through 10, this little critter on its eye stalks would normally walk away. But because we are here to make sure, because we're here to show people how to do it, we're going to slip that over to a 5, and now it's going to be a fight. So now that can be a blessing if you roll up some huge, elite or overwhelming monster, and he looks at you and yawns or laughs and walks away. That's okay. All right, so combat resolution steps. Okay, he's not being stealthy, so we're not going to use that. But basically, if you were being stealthy, you would make a roll against his awareness of 8 versus stealth. And if you won, then you could just go in and see what was there without engaging. Now, if you wanted to try to sneak across the area through the area in bypass, then I think that would be a separate roll too. All right, now all PCs and NPCs, well, yeah, all PCs and NPCs gain 2 stress. All right, so he's going to get a resolve to try to reduce that to 1 stress. Okay, that's good. So he's down to 6, or up to 6, I mean. He's up to 6 stress. But an aberration, in each class of monster kind of has their own bonuses. Like synthetics, they don't suffer the negative effects of getting knocked down. Aberrations are creepy, freaky, and they cause +5 stress whenever you encounter them. So we're going to give him another resolve roll. 12 plus will of 10. So that's over 20. It's 22. He's still going to take a minimum of 1 stress, though, for that. So his stress is now 7. If he had not made it, then he'd have to go over and roll on the stress table for having gone over 10 to see what kind of negative reaction he had. And that's not really the best time to have a negative reaction or to freak out, is right before combat. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to say that all the boxes, and it's not even going to come into effect because I'm just going to probably, people are just going to like shoot each other. All the boxes and the walls are hard cover, and then everything else is going to be like the partial cover. All right, so we determine where everyone's being placed. For myself, I think it should be a little different. Maybe like if we're doing initiative, then if someone gets this prize, they're in the middle, and then the other people are placed around it, or vice versa. Just especially for the PCs, because if you step off the grid, and in this case, I'm going to say there's only 2 sides to step off, so that may come in play. But as soon as you step off the grid, you've escaped. All right, and that kind of takes some of the tension away if you can just sit here and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and then run away, and they're not going to follow you. But all right, let's see where the PC goes. All right, he's going to go 1. Now I'm holding it this way, but it's 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm holding it this way mostly for camera reasons. So what you do is you set them up at the edge, that first row edge in there. I don't know where he's at, so I'm just going to roll D12 going left to right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll say he's in here when the combat starts. He's looking around. Maybe he saw something sparkly. And then now we're going to roll to see where the enemy comes, the swarm. What did we name it? The Gone. Gone. I feel like I'm going to say gone. All right, so that's 2. Since it really is coming from one of the entrances, I'm just going to put them right there. All right, now there are situations where the initiative may be changed, like if one side gets ambushed, they get +2 initiative during the combat. So the table is 1 or 2, there's no ambush, or there's no surprise. 1 or 2, no surprise. 3 or 4, the players have surprise. 5 or 6, the monster has surprise. All right, so neither side is surprised. They know there's something out there. All right, now all characters roll for initiative. Now the battle sheet, the combat sheet, has a handy little area for that. Let's see if I can show that without knocking all my pieces over. And that's right here. I usually just throw the PCs, their initiative, over here. Now it is individual initiative, but I've run some pretty big ones, and it can really get funky trying to keep track of each one individually. So I have, from time to time, I've just done group initiative. So it'd be like the NPCs had an overall initiative, and then the easy creatures had one initiative, and then the standard creatures had another initiative. So in this case, it's only the 2, and neither one has a surprise, so no one gets a bonus. Oh, all right, so we got a 2. Not great. They got a 4, or it got a 4. All right. So now the way this works is the critter is going to move. And he's got, well, you guys see, kind of has six tentacles. But his, let's see, I marked his character down here. I think it said he had a move of 2. I should note that. Yeah, a move of 2. I think because he's a swarm. I'll note that over here. Got drain and a move of 2. He knows we're there. It knows. They know we're here. They know I'm here. Man, I'm just getting all these tenses confused. All right, 1, 2. So he's going to move 2. Now for my character, he has 10 stamina. Your options are to spend the points on the stamina, and just as a little refresher, standard attack, heavy attack, fast attack. You can save it, draw a different weapon, use an item, stand up or pick something. You can actually use 5 stamina to bump your initiative up by 1, and that's not the number. You bump it up for that turn. That's actually your order, right? So in this case, like his initiative was 4, mine was 2. Me bumping it up to 3 doesn't help me. So it bumps the order, not just your initiative number. And then if you want to maintain stealth, that's 5 stamina per round. And you can move 1 hex. And that doesn't cost stamina, that's free. You can move 2 hexes if you use all your stamina. So he hears the chittering or splopping of the eye stalk octopus aliens, and I think he's going to use 2 so that he can set up on this corner right here and peer around and get ready. And he sees that creature. He's like, "What? What in the world?" All right, so that turns over. Next turn, he's going to move 2. Now, his weapon has a alternate fire mode where he can launch a grenade launcher, or where he can fire a grenade launcher. It takes 5 stamina to switch it over, and then 5 would be the standard attack. It is a swarm, so maybe he'll try to do that. Because now it's his turn, or his action on turn 2. Let's see. Does he want to do that? Maybe to show, but yeah, I think he will. All right. So he's going to spend 5 stamina to switch the alternate mode, and then he's going to make an attack. That grenade launcher attack, the bullets have a range of 7. In this game, each weapon has a certain range, and it is pretty short. So the way I play it, you're not supposed to be able to attack outside that range, but if you're shooting, on this scale, I prefer to think of it as the effective range, and so you can shoot like beyond that, and really on most of these maps, you could shoot a pistol all the way across, but I play it if it's outside the effective range, then you have to roll with difficulty, which is already difficult enough. So you can spend 5 to switch it, then 5 to make a standard attack. Normally, that roll is going to be its dexterity of 12 versus my range fire of 7. But because he's shooting a grenade at an actual hex, he's not really trying to hit it. So I'm going to make that a standard skill roll to put it where I want to put it. 10 plus 7, so 17, not quite. Of course, it does go somewhere. So we're going to take a look at our scatter table. And I'm going to hit pause while I look that up. All right. So this is the thrown explosives part. And it says it requires a successful dex check required for a thrown explosive. So I think it would work the same with a a grenade launcher, except instead of throwing decks for the throw, it would have done used what I did with the fire combat instead. All right, so I missed, and now I'm going to roll a d8 and use this chart. Now the explosive could still actually land close enough to damage that creature. All right, 2. So according to that, it's northeast. So 1 hex northeast. So it landed right there. And this has an explosive of 1, so it's going to affect everything within 1 hex. So that's going to hit that creature. All right, now here's how the damage works. Now this particular, the explosive for his weapon does 1d10, or does plus 1d10 plus 10. Your base damage for all characters is d10. So he's going to be doing 2d10 plus 10. Now his talent is... oh no, that was someone else. Never mind. I was going to say there's a marksman talent, but I don't think it would apply anyway. So what we're going to do, it has a constitution of 8, and it has 2 armor. So my 2d10 plus 10 is going to have to get over 10, which obviously it's going to. All right, so even without the plus 10, it gets over. All right, so the grenade lands right there, boom, and because that's over, it knocks him. He's now knocked over. All right, so now my turn's over because I spent 5 stamina to switch firing modes, and then I spent 5 stamina to launch the grenade. In grenade launcher mode, it's a slow weapon, which means that he can only fire it once every other round. So it means like he has to reload it like an M203, you know, pop it open, slide in the grenade, shut it, and then shoot the next grenade. So he's not going to do that probably, though. So now it's back. So he's used his stamina. Now it's back to the monster's turn. The monster is now going to make a recovery roll. That's going to be will over 20. So D20 plus 8. All right. So he makes that. He gets up, the explosion goes off, and he shakes it off. Well, he doesn't shake it off. He recovers from it. Now, once every monster, or once a foe recovers from recovery, you need to roll on their sheet to see what status they are. All right, 1, 2, 3 bloodied, or sorry, 1, 2 bloodied, 3, 4 cornered, 5, 6 overwhelmed. All right, so he's overwhelmed. So I'm going to come back to his sheet and see if I can remember what I put down there. All right, so they're overwhelmed is -2 defense. He doesn't have a defense stat right now. So I'm not sure if that would make his the defense is -2. Yeah, I guess so. So his defense is going to be -2 when it comes back in, when it comes up. So he's actually effectively is going to be 2 easier to hit. All right. Now he's an aberration. He just got knocked. Now he has an actual morale check. All right, and you trigger a morale check on the bad guys when in a group, when a member is killed. If they realize they're fighting an impossible foe, when witnessing acts of violence, they have 2 or they receive 2 wounds. I thought there was one. Okay, maybe that's an NPC morale table versus the critter morale table. Let me look that up here real quick. I may be looking at the wrong table. Okay, yeah, so that's human NPCs, and of course it would have to be because it said 2 wounds, and most monsters don't have 2 wounds. So it's actually this enemy morale table. This little shiny, and you see there's one for demoralized humanoids and demoralized aberration, fauna, and synthetics. Now, some things do not get demoralized, but obviously aberrations do. Let's see. Group situation. Let's see. When knocked down. Okay. All right, so they've got, it's going to pass or try to do, it made its recovery roll, but it needs to do a morale roll, which is also going to be a willpower 15. All right, so it made its willpower roll, so it stays in fight. But there is a chart right there where they could freeze, run away, etc. Now, you may be knocked down several more times, but I don't think I'm going to make it do any more morale. It's ready to fight. It's going to buzz and eat the flesh from this interloper. All right, now it's going to move, and that's really about all it can do. It's got to close. Oh, and if I were smart, I would have moved, although it wouldn't have mattered too much. But I am, so now it's my turn. I'm going to move one so that I don't get I don't get trapped there. And now this is the part where you have to decide more closely on how to spend your stamina. You don't have to decide how to spend it all at once, but I'm thinking I'm going to make a standard attack, or I'm going to flip it back my to submachine gun mode. And now I can either save that to help me. Oh, and I need to remember that he gets 2 attacks around. I can use my last 5 stamina to switch weapons because the swarm is going to be on me any second. Or I can fire one final burst with my submachine gun. And I think that's what I'm going to try to do. Now, the standard attack is simply it's a dexterity roll. Now, I'm actually kind of at a disadvantage because my ranged combat is 7. So I have to beat his roll with his dexterity of 12. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend my last to do that. 8 and 14. All right, so I fire off bursts of bullets, and they splatter around. They knock some of the swarm away, but otherwise it's ineffective, and I am now out of stamina. So it looks like it will probably have been a bad choice, especially since he has charge. Well, no, he wouldn't have been able to. Because he would, well, I guess he could have. Oh well. He fired his shot. He missed. Now it's their turn, and they're going to come in and attack. All right. So for melee, it's also a compared roll of, or an opposed roll of close combat versus a monster's attack. If whoever is attacking, they get a bonus. All right, they get a bonus of +2. So in this case, their attack is +7, and so they're going to get a +9. They're going to get a total of +9. And I need to remember that their defense is lowered. I don't think it would have mattered on that machine gun shot, though. It's a pretty bad shot. Um, so they're going to attack at a +9. They're blue, in case I hadn't stated that. Versus my close combat of 10. So in close combat, I have the advantage by +1. All right. Didn't help. They hit for sure, so they're going to do 2d12. Get my d12 here. Where'd you go? Get my 2d12 -1 minus d10. All right, so that's 11. The 5s will cancel out because the 10 or the d10 is subtracted, and then -1, so that's 10 versus my constitution of 12 plus my armor of 3. So it's not looking great that they're going to be able to get that. So, but that's one attack. They can make 2 attacks. And that's what they're going to do. All right, so they hit me again. And don't even come close to doing any damage. All right, so looking at this, he's going to spend 5 to basically drop his gun and pull out his knife because he's actually better with that, and it does the same amount of damage. Although the submachine gun does have a burst option, which allows you to reroll damage with the possibility of immediately using up one of your ammo. But he's at -2 for that. Maybe that's what he should do. No, you're at -2 if you try to shoot at something that's in melee range with you. But I think as I picture this swarm going around his feet and trying to claw him and climb up on him, I don't suspect that he's just going to start randomly shooting in circles. So he draws his knife and he's going to start trying to stomp and slash and stab these things. So it takes 5 to do the weapon switch, and so he's got +2, so it's +12. Oh, whoops, I keep forgetting that he's minus... Oh, no, he's not wounded. Never mind, he was wounded, which would have given him -2, but he's not wounded. So, so he gets +2, so his is +12, versus I'm going to give their defense -2, so +5. So +12 versus +5. All right, so 16 plus 20. So they win that fight. And all right, so that means that they actually damage, or they hit him, they roll for damage. All right, once again, no damage. Now it's them. They get 2 attacks. Same thing, but they're going to be at +9. All right, so that's 17. And then my +10, so it's 20. So he wins. He gets 2d10 versus their constitution and their armor. So he's got to get 10 or higher. All right, he gets 10 or higher. They are back to being knocked down. He's going to spend his second 5 stamina to attack. Now, once they're down, and you know what? I have completely forgot. Once they are knocked down one time, the rest of the combat, they roll at disadvantage. And I completely forgot that. So that might have changed the outcome a little bit, but maybe not. And if they are knocked down, if anyone is knocked down, they roll their defense at disadvantage, although they still get their full thing. So their full armor. So they're knocked down. He's going to try to make his melee roll. Oh, look at that. So that's a 20. 20 is automatic, goes through the armor. So if they were not knocked down, they'd automatically be knocked down. In this case, that means that he's automatically wounded. That creature only has 1 wound. And so that creature is dead. That swarm, as he slashes and kicks the swarm, he starts sticking them to the ground, slashing them bugs open, or octopus heads open, and stomping on them like, and their heads are exploding like big ripe Roma tomatoes, spraying alien blood guts everywhere. And then that battle is over. And that's how you run the fights. It can get a little, it can get a little trying to keep track of things when you've got multiple good guys and 2 groups of bad guys. And so I think that's probably a good spot to end the how-to. We're a little over an hour. We did combat as written, although I forgot a couple of things about and that's one thing that two things that I always forget. One, when I'm rolling damage, I constantly forget to add the hit location. Like when he's doing the swarm, I forgot that I was supposed to add +1 to the damage rolls. When he was attacking me, I forgot to roll the damage rolls at all. And there's just some kind of block I have on those. I don't have a problem with damage locations. I just cannot remember to roll those. I always forget. I mean, always. Even if I remember one round, by the round 3, I forget. And it's even got a big, got a big chart on the table right there. And there's also a basic sequence chart on that sheet too, which is pretty handy. And then the rest of the game is just the loop, right? You explore, you roll your encounter, you mark time. Whenever you mark time, you expend ammo if you fired in that time track, which in this case you did. Oxygen and battery. All right. Also, at the end, or really at the end or the beginning of the next is kind of the same point in time, you roll an activity roll, and on a 1 or a 2, you encounter a known threat. All right. As you go back through the areas, you don't necessarily need to roll for more monsters. I usually don't, although you always roll for the activity. If you've already cleared it, it's clear. If you wanted to shoot up some more monsters, but you don't get anything for them. You go through, you gather your resources, you count up, and you collect your artifacts, your cubes, your data crystals, and you have to keep track of how much room you have in your backpack. So when you roll them up, you get, if you get resources, you get D10 cubes and D6 crystals. When you get artifacts, some of those will be 1 gear slot, some will be light. And light means that if it goes in your pocket on your character sheet, it has to be light. If it's light, then you can have 10 of them in a slot in your backpack. Right, so you can carry a lot of data crystals and some artifacts. If they're all light, you can shove them in the same slot. You do have to mark time on your way back, even if you don't roll for monsters. And then in this case, he would have to make his way back to the landing station and then take off. And then once you fly back, you're back into your rolling a weekly event, 20%. Now, of course, you don't have to roll when you get back. We know that in this case it was only 2 weeks, but each one of those weeks you have to roll for events. So that could make it the return trip very strange. There's some weird misjumps. All right, and then you figure out the cost of things. It's a standard. If you can also spend in each area, you can make one RSI technology roll to scavenge. All right, so that's if you roll above the 20, then you find enough salvage worth 100 Drake coins. Otherwise, you sell the cubes for 75 each, the data crystals for 50 each, and then each artifact has its own individual. You roll on a table for that. And that's pretty much how you play across 1,000 Dead Worlds. Then you go back, you carouse, you do that stuff, you spend points to level up, get new gear, and then you go on the next mission. So it's a fun game, got a lot to it, and I hope this was helpful to you. And there's a lot of info you can find on the Black Oath Discord channel, and Alex T is always very helpful and willing to answer questions. So anyway, I enjoyed this. I hope you did too, and happy gaming.